Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a piece of source material today that honestly reads like a blockbuster movie script. We are talking high-stakes family drama, a disastrous broken wedding, and ultimately a love story built entirely in silence. We're going to break down the story of Aryan and Payal and explore what it teaches us about how the strongest foundations are sometimes built out of completely shattered expectations. Picture this. You're at the lavish Malhotra mansion in Lucknow. It is decorated like an absolute dream. Jasmine, roses, twinkling lights everywhere. Hundreds of guests are waiting. The sacred fire is burning. The groom is completely ready to go. And then, just complete silence. The bride is gone. The only thing left behind in her room is her red bridal lehenga and a letter with this devastatingly final line. She wants to live her life on her own terms. The bride, Neha, literally waited until the last possible second to run away with another man, knowing it was the only way nobody could stop her. It is an absolute shock to the system, and it throws us right into the heart-pounding crisis of this wedding night.
Okay, let's dive right into section 1, the broken wedding night.
To really wrap our heads around this chaotic timeline, we've got to look at our protagonist, Aryan. He's a 36-year-old, highly successful architect. He goes from months of joyful wedding prep straight into a literal nightmare. So, Neha vanishes, they find the letter, and then the bride's absolutely devastated father, Rajesh Sinha, steps forward in tears. He's begging Aryan's family to save his honor. And his desperate solution? He offers his younger daughter, Payal, to take Neha's place at the altar. To save both families from utter, crushing public disgrace, this rushed, completely forced compromise is made.
Which brings us to section 2, a marriage of compromise.
So, within an hour, Neha's 32-year-old, incredibly quiet sister Payal is dressed in a red sari and shoved toward the altar. Aryan and Payal take their vows, but there is absolutely zero joy here. And this brilliantly illustrates why Aryan was so blinded by his new reality. He wanted the glamorous, talkative Neha, his first choice. Instead, he gets Payal, the sister who always just hovered silently in the background. In his grief, he completely dismisses her. Almost instantly, he throws up this massive, impenetrable wall of silence between himself and his sudden, accidental wife. The early days of this marriage, just agonizing to analyze. Aryan leaves for his architecture firm at the crack of dawn without even looking at Payal and comes back super late, just shutting himself in his room. The silence at the dinner table is so heavy you could literally hear a pin drop. Their only real interaction happens when Aryan furiously corners Payal, demanding to know if she knew about Neha's secret lover. Payal admits she did, but explains she couldn't betray her sister's secret. Aryan is livid, and the distance between them feels completely impossible to bridge. It's your classic defense mechanism, right? Building a wall of cold silence to avoid dealing with a reality you didn't ask for. So, let's look at section 3, the architecture of love. Now, what's really interesting about this part of the story is how the narrative shifts. Because Aryan is an architect, the rebuilding of their relationship actually happens through blueprints. Aryan is working at home, tearing his hair out over a rejected heritage design. Payal quietly brings him some tea, glances at the plans, and casually points out a massive flaw. She notices he closed off a Mughal archway, and she explains that in old architecture you don't block those up. You open them with latticework to let the building's soul breathe. Aryan tries it, and the client instantly approves. Later, she corrects a temple design for Varanasi, remembering from her childhood that the windows have to face east to catch that morning sunlight on the gods. She doesn't just get building mechanics, She genuinely understands the emotional soul of a space. And this realization completely floors Aryan. He stares at this quiet woman he's basically been ignoring for months and asks his very first genuine question. Why did you never work? Payal just responds very simply that her family poured all their attention and resources into letting Neha shine, so she just stayed home. Boom. This is the very first real crack in Aryan's wall of indifference. He suddenly sees the massive depth of her sacrifice potential, and right then and there, he invites her to join his architectural studio. Moving right along to section 4, a new professional partnership. Payal steps completely out of the shadows of that house and right into the driver's seat of Aryan's professional life. Watching her rise in the studio is just awesome. She's hesitant at first, but the second her hands hit the drafting board, she is totally in her element. Her emotional perspective on historical buildings quickly becomes the firm's signature style. But the real test, that comes when a massive make-or-break pitch for a Delhi heritage hotel is due, and Aryan falls violently ill with a high fever. With quiet determination, Payal steps up, travels to the meeting herself, and pitches the whole thing. She completely wins the clients over by talking about buildings as living, breathing stories. And the best part is, this professional triumph bleeds so beautifully into their domestic life. When she comes back victorious, Aryan looks at her with a real deep respect, immense gratitude, and you can see the beginnings of genuine affection. They start sharing these late-night dinners, bonding over his childhood dreams of building old mansions. For the first time since that absolute disaster of a wedding night, Aryan actually goes to sleep with a peaceful mind, completely free from the grief of losing Neha. A true, solid partnership is taking shape. Let's move to Section 5, The Secret Diary. Now, the catalyst for this next massive revelation is actually Aryan's younger brother, Kabir. He's a bit tipsy one night and accidentally lets it slip that Payal has actually been in love with Aryan since they were kids. Aryan is totally floored. Later, he's clearing out the attic and he stumbles upon Payal's old diary. It's light blue with a little butterfly on the cover. He opens it up, and right there on the pages is an entry from 5 years ago. A teenage Payal writes about a day Aryan scolded some boy who was bothering her at school. She writes, "I don't feel scared when he is around." Aryan realizes with this sinking feeling in his chest that she had loved him from the shadows for years. Let's see how this builds, because turning these pages becomes incredibly painful for him. Aryan reads about the quiet, brutal agony Payal went through, just watching him court her glamorous older sister. She writes about the wedding night, how terrified she was because she knew Aryan didn't want her, but how she was still holding on to this tiny, fragile sliver of hope. She watched him, she loved him, she served him tea, just wishing that maybe, just once, he would truly look at her.
And then Aryan hits the most recent entry. And guys, it's not about some grand, sweeping romance. It's literally about a morning at breakfast where Aryan simply pulled out a chair for her to sit down. For Payal, that tiny, everyday gesture of basic respect meant the absolute world. Sitting alone in that dusty attic, Aryan completely breaks down. It's just profound remorse. He realizes he spent months mourning a woman who totally abandoned him, all while completely ignoring this incredible woman who chose to stay by his side out of pure, unselfish hope.
Which brings us to our final act, Section 6, Rebuilding the Foundation. Aryan walks downstairs to find Payal in the kitchen. It's dusk, which the source beautifully describes as that space between dark and light, perfectly mirroring their own transition. With a trembling voice, he hands her the diary and just pours out an apology for how blindly he treated her. And Payal, with so much dignity, tells him she chose to be there because she never stopped seeing him, even when he couldn't see her. Aryan steps forward, takes her hand, and says, "I wasted a lot of time, but not anymore. Now I want to see you. Only you." And their hands finally meet, fully willingly, for the very first time.
It is such an incredibly moving resolution, right? It completely reframes how we think about connection. And it leaves us with this really profound question. Is true love always found in those flashy, dramatic moments of love at first sight? Or is the most enduring love the kind that is slowly, patiently built in the quiet moments, like a strong foundation waiting to support a beautiful structure? It's a great reminder of how often we overlook the steady foundations in our own lives because we're too distracted by the flashy aesthetics. Think on that, and I will see you in the next explainer.